裕豐專業團隊為你服務，讓你安享豐盛人生。裕豐用心理財。
Mike，歡迎你今日遠道由英國過到嚟香港接受我哋今日嘅訪問，我哋了解多啲 Man 集團嘅近況。咁我哋開始啦。Man AHL 咧係香港證監會少數認可嘅管理期貨基金，可唔可以幫我介紹一下呢個 CTA 嘅特性呢？
Managed futures, also known as CTAs, is one of the longest running and most successful hedge fund strategies in the world. According to Barclay Hedge, currently assets are in excess of 200 billion within the managed futures space. So what are managed futures? Managed futures, as the name suggests, trade a number of futures contracts across a wide range of sectors. So that is ranging from sectors such as agriculturals, bonds, interest rates, metals, and also stocks. By using futures, managed futures strategies have the flexibility to make money from prices moving up by going long the futures contract, and also make money from prices moving down by going short the futures contract. To give you an example, if you cast your mind back to 2008, when the price of crude oil moved up to $147 a barrel, managed futures managers, by using trend following strategies, were able to follow that trend and build a long position and make money from the price moving up. Similarly, when the price peaked at $147 a barrel and then came back down again, managed futures strategies were able to go short that contract and make money from the downside move as well. So like with the futures markets in oil, where managed futures made a lot of money in 2008. And this is one of the attractions of managed futures in the sense that they normally have a low, if not negative, correlation to stock markets. And the benefit of that is that through portfolio construction, because of the low correlation, not only does it enhance the return, but it also reduces the risk of a balanced portfolio spread across both bonds and also stocks.
Man AHL 係其中一隻市場上歷史最悠久，而且係表現最出色嘅一隻期貨管理基金。唔知佢嘅投資策略係點嘅呢？同埋佢同其他競爭對手有咩分別呢？
AHL is one of the longest running and most successful CTAs or managed futures managers in the world. We began operations in 1987, and now we have over 130 investment professionals spread across London, which is our head office, Hong Kong, where we have a permanent trading desk to trade the Southeast Asian markets, and also Oxford, where we have a permanent presence with the Oxford Mann Institute of Quantitative Finance. So AHL, as I mentioned before, is a managed futures manager. In terms of the systems we allocate to, the majority are trend following systems. That is, we're looking to identify either upward or downward trends across a wide range of markets. So ranging from agriculturals, bonds, currencies, metals, stocks, and more recently we've added within diversified futures things like interest rate swaps that we trend follow, and also credit default swaps and power futures such as the Nord Pool power contract. So what makes AHL different from the peer group? Well, certainly in terms of our commitment to research, we have over 90 research analysts that are looking at things from improving the existing trend following models, adding more complementary systems like non-trend following models, for example, to try and smooth out returns when markets aren't that positive for trend following. We also have research analysts that are looking at our execution capabilities, in particular our electronic trade execution capabilities in order to reduce our transaction costs when we trade on a 24-hour basis. And we also have research analysts that are looking at opening up new markets that other CTAs don't trade. So I mentioned before we trade these interest rate swaps, credit default swaps and power futures. We are one of the key innovators within the CTA space in terms of unlocking these new markets that offer return opportunities with a very low correlation to existing G10 markets that we trade.
可幫我哋介紹一下你自用交易系統裏邊嘅風險管理措施呢？
Risk management is integral to our investment process. At AHL, we target a specific level of volatility rather than a return. So for AHL Diversified Futures Limited, we target volatility of around 14%. In order to meet that volatility target, or at least get close to it, we have a variety of risk measures and risk processes in place that we monitor and control on a day-to-day basis. So what does that mean? It means that if back in 2008, when we saw the price of oil increase quite dramatically, the trend was getting stronger, so that logically would assume the fact that your position will get larger. But in actual fact, we started reducing our positions because the underlying volatility of the oil market was increasing as well. And so we do that for every single market we trade in order to control risk both at the market level and also at the portfolio level as well.
CTA 喺2008年金融危機嘅時間咧，表現之非常之出色，咁亦都吸引咗好多投資者去入市啦。但係之後咧，其實打後嗰幾年咧個成績只係一般。咁過去呢5年咧，其實Man AHL 咧喺投資策略方面有冇咩改變咧？又 AHL 個程式方面有冇咩改善咧
？Yes, managed futures had a very good year in 2008. While equity markets are down over 30% for the year. For example, AHL diversified futures was up over 20%, which really goes to show just how valuable an allocation to managed futures is within a balanced portfolio. But since then, managed futures to a certain degree have struggled. 2009 was the first negative calendar year for managed futures, and that was really driven by a lack of trends across bond and also currency markets, and to a lesser degree energy markets. And the reason behind that was a lot of central bank intervention being driven around the world by the developed economies. 2010 was a good year for managed futures in general, but then in 2011 and 2012 we had another two consecutive negative years. The reason behind that mainly came from one, a lot of central bank intervention, which to a certain degree has distorted the natural price discovery within markets. Second, we've seen heightened correlation across a number of markets and sectors, which means that CTAs lose a bit of diversification when, for example, commodity markets are trading like risk assets like we saw in 2011. But having said that, more recently, we've seen more positive performance coming from the managed futures strategy. So while I mentioned before the central bank intervention has been negative in 2011, 2012, certainly over the recent past, that intervention has been positive, in particular for equities, and also, for example, what the Bank of Japan is doing in terms of forcing down the value of the yen. And certainly we've been long stocks, in particular the S&P 500, and short the yen, which has really driven the strong short-term performance since November of last year.
AHL 係旨在追蹤過去唔同資產嘅過去嘅歷史價格，去獲取嘅利潤嘅。而家嗰個市況變得越嚟越短暫，唔知 AHL 點樣去調整去面對呢個挑戰呢
So in terms of enhancements that we've made over the recent past, this is very much in line with AHL's approach towards improving the models across both existing models, developing new ones, is that we do this on a continuous basis in order to improve both the short-term and long-term performance of AHL's programs. So certainly, as I mentioned before, the recent past has been challenging for CTAs and managed futures in general, in particular 2011, 2012. So what has AHL done to address this? First, we've done quite a bit of research into developing non-trend following systems that can potentially make money when markets aren't trending. So for example, we've introduced a bond curve trading system that looks at the change in the curvature of the yield curve and then puts on 3 trades, a butterfly trade, to take advantage of that mean reversion effect back when the yield curve snaps back. The beauty of this is that it has a very low correlation to trend following and can potentially make money when markets aren't trending. And certainly that performance of that particular model has been encouraging over the last couple of years.
而家呢個環境，呢個波動嘅環境啦，啲投資者對於商品嘅投資咧都係比較抗拒嘅。唔知你覺得呢個板塊最值得投資個機遇喺邊度呢
Yes, trading commodities has been particularly difficult over the last 2 years. Last year, for example, the worst performing sectors for AHL diversified futures was in trading metals and also in energies. So why is that the case? Well, the markets themselves haven't trended that strongly, based on the fact that there's a lot of uncertainty regarding economic growth. So for example, this year in 2013, the Dow Jones Commodity Index is actually down year to date. So what does that mean for AHL in terms of how we approach these markets? Well, we've done a lot of research into improving the models that we apply to trading the commodity markets. So one thing we have done is that we look at dynamically across the curve to see whether the market's in contango or backwardation. If it is in contango, then instead of trading the front month where there's a lot of negative roll yield, we'll trade further out if we want to go long that contract, so the negative roll yield doesn't actually eat into our return. I mentioned in the previous question as well that we are looking at spread trading, that is calendar spreads of different maturities of futures contracts, and we're currently doing that in the energy space, so things like heating oil, gas oil, and also natural gas as well.
新興市場喺過去10年都有急速嘅增長，唔知 AHL 點樣去定位去捕捉呢個機遇呢？
AHL has been a pioneer in adding new markets to our portfolio. So as I mentioned with the credit default swaps, interest rate swaps, going back in time, we were one of the first CTAs to start trading a lot of these emerging markets, currencies on a forward basis within the portfolio. At the moment, we're trading over 60 different emerging market contracts across a range of sectors. And at the moment, they currently account for 15% of the allocation on in risk terms for diversified futures. So what does that mean in terms of the return potential? Certainly within the emerging market space, especially with the interest rate swaps I mentioned, there is definitely a lot of return potential given the cash rates are so high. But not only do they provide return potential, they also provide a level of diversification as well within a balanced portfolio across both developed and emerging markets.